Welcome, everyone. Forget just casually putting on a record today, because we're not just dipping our toes in. We are diving deep into a really intense, highly structured music competition. We're talking about the Album Quest.
That's right. And our source material is this brilliant, and I mean really rigorous, blog series by Rocks. The whole point, an incredibly ambitious mission to try and figure out definitively what the best album of all time is.
Wow.
Yeah, and it demands way more than just, oh, I like this song. It's deep, structured analysis. It even forces the author, Rocks, to confront some of his own long-held ideas about music.
Okay, let's break that down a bit. The structure of this Album Quest, that's what makes it so interesting and honestly pretty brutal. Albums get grouped together, seemingly totally at random.
Yeah, it forces these weird matchups you'd never normally think of.
Exactly. And then the author ranks them first place down to worst. But the ranking isn't just one thing. It's like a mix of serious analysis, composition, production, that kind of stuff, but also pure gut reaction, personal feelings, maybe even a bit of irreverence.
Oh, absolutely. Humor, serious points, personal taste, historical impact, it's all in the mix. And the rules, well, they're completely unforgiving.
Tell me about it.
In every single group, every round, only the top two albums actually move on to round two. The bottom two, gone, eliminated instantly.
Ouch.
Yeah, the whole system is designed to really push even the strongest albums. You could have an album that maybe 90% of the time would easily win its group, but if it lands in a group with, say, 2 or 3 absolute stone-cold classics...
It's going home early. No second chances.
Exactly. Tough luck.
And Group 197, which is the specific battle we're digging into today, turned out to be precisely that kind of situation. A real cluster of great albums. The title the author gave this post kind of says it all. Queen Are Welcome and Lionel Richie Leaves U2 Behind.
That title alone tells you something big is happening. You hear U2 and Leaves Behind in the same sentence, and you know a major, globally successful album is about to get knocked out.
Right. So let's lay out the contenders for you. The 4 albums fighting for those 2 spots in Group 197, they covered quite a range of rock and pop.
Okay, so first up, you had the new metal band Taproot with their 2002 album, Welcome.
Then, a big shift, Lionel Richie's career-spanning definitive collection, Part 1.
Yep. Followed by Queen with their second big hits collection, Greatest Hits 2. They needed sequels.
Incredible. And finally, U2's huge, critically acclaimed 10th studio album, All That You Can't Leave Behind.
So a real mix.
And the core tension, the thing the source points out right away, isn't just the quality difference, but how high the quality is at the top end. This group had, and I'm quoting here, very, very strong albums, 3 of them.
So the fight wasn't just about who gets second place. The real question was, whose specific kind of brilliance, maybe concentrated hits versus consistent album flow, was going to win out?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? That philosophical angle is what we're really going to explore in this Album Quest analysis. Okay, so to really get why the winners won, we kind of have to start at the bottom with the clear outlier, the album that just didn't fit. Let's talk about Taproot's second album, Welcome. It really sets the floor for this group's quality.
Yeah, I mean, putting this album next to Queen, U2, and Lionel Richie, the author basically flagged it straight away as the easy one to eliminate.
You didn't mince words.
No, he described it as being so far out of its depth in this group of worldly legends, it's almost embarrassing. And he wasn't just being dramatic, he genuinely felt this album would struggle against almost any 3 albums from, like, the last 50 years of music.
Wow, that's pretty brutal. But for listeners, maybe let's place Taproot a bit. This album, Welcome, it came out in the early 2000s, right in that new metal post-grunge wave.
Exactly, an era known for that raw, kind of aggressive emotion in the music.
Right. And that specific tone, that aggression, is exactly where the author started his critique.
And it wasn't like he was hearing Taproot for the first time here either. He'd actually reviewed their first album, Gift, in an earlier round of the Quest, Group 177, I think.
How did that go?
It also finished last, dead last, 4th place. And that was in a group that probably wasn't nearly as strong as this one, so there was already a track record, you could say, of them not quite cutting it in this Album Quest.
Okay, so a pattern emerging. Why the consistently low ranking then? What were the specific problems the author found with Welcome?
Well, the main criticism really boiled down to 2 big issues. First, he argues the music is just drowning in what he calls pointless angst.
Pointless angst. What does that mean exactly? It's not just about being emotional.
No, it's more that the emotion feels well, maybe manufactured, or just kind of directionless. Like it's trying really hard to sound intense, but there's no real substance, no musical or thematic reason for it. It just feels like shouting for shouting's sake.
I think that idea of pointless angst is key. He's not knocking all heavy music, obviously.
Yeah.
So why Taproot?
Because, according to the source, that sort of forced emotion is basically there to cover up what he called a gigantic lack of musical imagination. Yeah, like if you take away the loud vocals and the heavy guitars, what's left is just repetitive. Musically really limited, the rhythms felt sluggish, the guitars were just doing the same basic kind of formulaic drop tune stuff over and over. Very little harmonic movement across the whole album.
So it's less about the sound itself, the heaviness, and more about a lack of actual songwriting underneath it, relying on texture over substance.
Precisely. The author made this point that the album is so devoid of any musical diversity, his words, that you could literally just listen to track 1 10 times in a row instead of the whole album.
And you wouldn't miss much.
And you barely notice the difference. It's just this relentless kind of flat wall of sound, no real dynamics, no peaks, no valleys, no surprises, which, makes it really tough listening when you put it next to the dynamism of the other albums in the group.
Yeah, that kind of monotonous sound would definitely pale in comparison to albums spanning decades of creativity.
Yeah.
But wasn't there one track that got singled out? A slight exception?
Yes. Yeah, there was. The track Poem.
Yeah.
That was the one moment the author gave some credit to from what he called this otherwise sorry album. He described it as, still an angsty, shouty, hard rock track, so it fit the mold. But this one apparently had a pretty catchy chorus. Something memorable finally poked through.
And there was a specific detail, right?
Yeah.
Something about the production.
Yeah, he pointed out this one specific gimmick in the chorus that actually worked quite well. The vocalist, Stephen Richards, sings the line, "Break the glass," but when he gets to the word glass, he doesn't just sing it, he shouts it, like really loud and jarring.
Yeah.
And that specific choice, that sudden vocal blast, apparently created this effective, punchy moment.
Yeah.
It just lifted that one track slightly above the kind of sonic sameness of everything else.
So just slightly.
Yeah.
Just one track.
Exactly. Even that one moment wasn't nearly enough to save it. Taproot's Welcome finished dead last, 4th place, clearly eliminated. It really does set that low bar, which makes the fight happening above it seem even more intense.
Right, so we've established that baseline with Taproot, kind of monotonous, lacking imagination. Now we move up to U2. Almost the opposite problem, maybe. A band known for consistency, professionalism. But was that enough in this group?
U2's All That You Can't Leave Behind is like the perfect example of a tragic contestant in Group 197. This album is not weak. Not by any stretch. It's mature, it's professional, it's really consistently excellent.
So to understand why it got knocked out, we need to appreciate just how good it actually is first.
Absolutely. And the context is important too. This was their 10th studio album, came out right around the year 2000, but it was after a period where they'd been experimenting quite a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, the album before this was Pop, 1997. That one was really controversial.
That's right. Very electronic, dance music influences, lots of irony. It definitely split their fan base. So All That You Can't Leave Behind felt like a very deliberate kind of high-stakes move back, a return to that classic, big, anthemic, guitar-led U2 sound.
But maybe updated a bit.
Yeah.
Wiser.
Exactly. Infused with everything they'd learned in that experimental decade. The source just calls it a solid album without any real weakness. High praise.
And they definitely came out swinging on the album.
Yeah.
The first few tracks are just classic U2, signaling that return immediately.
Oh, yeah. Track 1, Beautiful Day, just a brilliant soaring anthem. Pure U2 architecture, Then track 2, Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out Of. A gorgeous ballad showing that mature, sensitive side.
And Elevation.
Elevation rounds out that opening run. It's got that inventive guitar work, but still feels like a rock ballad. It keeps the energy up because they still had new tricks. Just a really strong opening statement.
It's pretty amazing, really, for a band that deep into their career, delivering that level of focus quality. And this album, it gave us that observation about Bono, the paradox.
Right. The author singles out that specific line. Bono sings, "I'm a mullet digging in a hole."
Which, let's be honest, written down looks kind of ridiculous, maybe even a bit silly.
Totally. Sounds almost self-parodying. And yet, somehow, Bono delivers it and still sounds impossibly cool. Profound, even.
And the author uses this seemingly small, funny detail to make a much bigger point, right? About charisma.
Yeah, it says so much about the power of a truly legendary frontman. He calls Bono the paragon of rock frontman. His point is that Bono's sheer belief, his vocal power, his stage presence. It lets him sell lines that would sound daft coming from anyone else. He can turn awkward lyrics into something compelling.
That ability to make even a questionable metaphor work, that's a sign of something special.
Definitely a sign of rock immortality, as the author puts it.
And the overall musical style, the pacing of the album, it contributes to its strength, but maybe also points to why it lost out in this specific contest.
Well, the quality level is incredibly consistent. It barely dips. You've got other strong tracks like Walk On, Wild Honey, New York. They keep things moving really well. But compared to maybe the explosiveness of Queen, the author felt the pacing was a bit more controlled.
How so?
It shares that professionalism you hear on, say, Achtung Baby, but he notes they never really crank up the tempo in that same way. It doesn't quite have those massive, career-defining peaks of energy that some other bands deliver.
So it's more like a sustained, high-level cruise control. Very professional, very high quality, respecting their legacy, but not necessarily aiming to blow the doors off.
That's a good way to put it. Every song is really well put together. Solid construction, they're pushing things gently, evolving, but keeping that core U2 gravity, that classic rock and roll feel.
Yeah.
It's excellent, professional, crafted, start to finish.
But hang on, I have to push back a bit here. If we're talking about an album quest, shouldn't we value that kind of holistic, artistic statement? You know, a band successfully defining a mature sound, especially after a tricky album like Pop. Isn't this what a great album does compared to just a collection of songs? Is the quest maybe penalizing artistic cohesion here?
That's a really fair point, and it gets right to the heart of what this album quest forces us to think about. How do we define best? You or I might absolutely prefer that cohesive album statement. But the sources analysis, looking purely at the competitive results within this group, well, it concluded the sheer power of the other contenders was just too much.
It's interesting how he frames the defeat, though.
Yeah, the source is really clear on this. He says the only reason this U2 album gets eliminated is because it was up against musical collections by two absolute legends of pop and rock.
So it didn't lose because it was flawed.
Not at all. It lost because the Lionel Richie and Queen collections contain such an incredibly high density of massive, undeniable, era-defining hit songs. It was simply overwhelmed by the sheer concentration of legendary material. U2 lost to concentration.
And that elimination, U2 losing to concentrated hits, brings us right to maybe the most interesting part of this whole group analysis. This philosophical shift the author Greenstrocks went through. He talks about doing a 180 on his whole view of greatest hits albums and compilations.
Yeah, this is a really big moment in the album quest narrative, it seems, because as he admits, he used to be a total purist about this stuff.
What did that mean? How did he used to view compilations?
With a lot of suspicion, basically. He just didn't buy that a collection of hits pulled from different albums, maybe different eras, could ever truly stand up against a proper studio album. You know, something conceived and sequenced as one single piece of art.
Right, the argument about artistic intent.
Exactly. He thought compilations felt manufactured, kind of jumbled. Compared to the flow and theme of a proper album, he always questioned, like, did the artist even approve this track list, this order? Where's the narrative?
And he had this amazing, kind of darkly funny image he used to illustrate that purist horror, didn't he?
Yeah.
About how these things might be made.
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant. He painted this picture that was the total opposite of careful artistry. He imagined some talentless, faceless studio button pusher, just grabbing the best tracks, slapping them together into a mixtape while, and this is the best part, while eating a pickle sandwich and dribbling mayonnaise over the control panel.
Oh, no. Mayonnaise on the mixing desk.
You're right. And his point was, if that's how these things are potentially made, how can you possibly call it a lovingly created piece of craftsmanship? How is that respecting the artist's original vision?
The image really does capture the purest nightmare, doesn't it? Sloppy, disrespectful, no artistic control, just chaos versus intent.
Totally. And for years, he basically only tolerated compilations as maybe a way for a new listener to kind of get into a band. But even then, it came with a big asterisk.
What was the advice?
His firm stance was always, don't stop there, go buy the proper albums. That's the real deal. He even jokes about it, saying, I ate my own dog food on this, meaning he strictly followed his own purist advice for years.
But now, facing these powerhouse collections from Queen and Lionel Richie, he admits he's gotten older and wiser. What changed? What practical things made him warm up to the idea of the compilation?
It seems to be mostly about acknowledging the sheer magnitude of some artists' careers and just the practical reality of how people listen to music now. He realized, look, the best songs from some bands span decades. Different sounds, different lineups sometimes.
Right, you can't realistically expect someone to listen to, like, 50 hours of back catalog just to find the 5 or 10 truly essential tracks.
Exactly. It becomes a question of practicality versus ideology. If you've only got so much time for listening, the efficiency, the sheer hit density of a great compilation becomes really hard to argue against, especially with artists who've been around forever.
He gave some specific examples of when they really shine, didn't he?
Yeah, proving their usefulness. Like, maybe you're driving for hours, or you just want some great background music for a whole weekend afternoon. Or, and this was the analogy that really stuck with me, you're using something like an old iPod Shuffle in the car for a week.
Oh, yeah, the limited storage problem.
Right. Yep. An iPod Shuffle that could barely hold like 4 sprawling double prog rock albums. In that situation, what do you load up?
You load up the greatest hits. It's the only way to get variety and quality in that limited space. Time, attention, storage, these constraints really do shape how we consume music.
And in those scenarios, he argues, the greatest hits album isn't just okay, it's often the best option. It's the quickest, most direct route to the absolute peak material an artist produced. It forces you to admit that maybe the objective quality packed into a collection can sometimes outweigh the subjective value of a single album's narrative, especially in a head-to-head contest like this album quest.
Okay, but what about the purists still yelling about their favorite obscure B-side, the deep cut that never makes the official compilation? Did he address that?
He did acknowledge it, yeah. He conceded that, sure, sometimes your personal favorite hidden gem won't make the cut on an official best of, but he basically concluded that now he thinks that's not as big a deal as he used to make it out to be, especially when the alternative is wading through maybe 2 or 3 weaker studio albums just to find that one diamond track. The trade-off starts to look pretty good.
So the sheer undeniable quality density in Group 197, the hit-after-hit power of Queen and Lionel Richie, that was the final proof he needed, it forced the philosophical change.
It seems like it. It was the ultimate test case that confirmed his new, more pragmatic appreciation for the power of a well-curated compilation.
Okay, so we've established that philosophical shift. Concentrated quality can beat consistent cohesion. Now let's dive into the winners themselves. To knock out a really strong, cohesive album like U2's, these collections had to be, as the source put it, monumentally good, just peak after peak.
And they absolutely were. Taking second place and moving on to round 2 was Lionel Richie's Definitive Collection, Part 1. The source describes this as a glorious reminder of the magic composed by this man over the years. It really cements Richie's status as, one of the truly great American songwriters and hitmakers of that era.
Yeah, and when you actually look at the tracks mentioned, these aren't just hits, they're like embedded in pop culture.
Oh, totally. You're immediately hit with the energy of All Night Long, then the smoothness of Say You Say Me, the pure fun of Dancing on the Ceiling.
Love Will Conquer All.
Right, that great ballad. And the melodic punch of Closest Thing to Heaven. They just flow one after another, all carried by that instantly recognizable, incredibly smooth voice.
It's interesting the author mentioned being kind of surprised himself, like, he knew all these songs, obviously knew the choruses, but hadn't necessarily consciously clocked that they were all Lionel Richie songs.
That's often the sign of truly massive, ubiquitous music, isn't it? The songs that become so much a part of the background noise of life, they almost feel like they just exist separate from the artist. That level of reach says a lot about Richie's skill and his versatility, which the author really highlights.
How did he describe Richie's versatility? What made him stand out?
He calls him one of those rare songwriters who can glide between styles without ever losing quality. Just pure class, no matter the genre. And this collection proves it. You hear elements of Motown, crisp synth pop sounds, infectious Latino pop rhythms, even some lighthearted walk touches.
But he really nailed one style in particular.
Yeah, the author argues his absolute peak, his true mastery, lies in that piano-driven pop balladry. He's just a master craftsman of the form. This collection basically concentrates all that multi-genre brilliance into one package. Phenomenally strong.
Phenomenally strong, yeah.
Yeah.
And it still only came second. Which means the winner Queen's Greatest Hits 2, must have been an even more relentless onslaught of iconic music.
It took first place, and yeah, you can see why. Queen, as the author puts it, was a band so successful, so packed with hits, that even their greatest hits albums needed sequels.
Incredible.
And this one, Greatest Hits 2, it picks up where the first one left off, basically covering Queen's output from 1981 onwards. It charts that final, really creative, often quite heavy decade right up until 1991. That period includes Freddie Mercury's death in November 91, which effectively marked the end of that legendary classic lineup.
So this collection captures that powerful later era, all the emotional weight, the creative pushes of that final decade, but packaged for maximum impact.
Precisely. And the author makes a point of really defining why that classic lineup was so special. He classifies Queen as a true supergroup, puts them in the same bracket as bands like Fleetwood Mac or The Police, maybe Genesis.
What's the defining feature of a supergroup in this context? It's not just about fame.
No, it's about the internal creative dynamic. The criterion he uses is having multiple, genuinely world-class musicians, all writing world-class songs, all operating at their peak at the same time within the same band.
Okay, so more than just a great frontman.
Exactly. For Queen, he specifically points to Brian May and Freddie Mercury. He argues they were two of the finest ever seen in their respective disciplines. You have May's unique, layered guitar sound instantly recognizable, coupled with Mercury's unbelievable vocal range, his theatricality, his songwriting talent. That combination gave them a huge advantage in a contest based on hit concentration.
And the track list from Greatest Hits 2 just backs that up, doesn't it? It's just relentless power. Some of the most complex, but also catchiest stadium rock ever made.
It really is staggering. You go from the driving energy of a rocker, like I Want It All, straight into the massive anthemic sweep of Radio Gaga, the song that basically invented mass audience participation at concerts.
Yeah.
Then you pivot to something like the lush, almost orchestral synth ballad Who Wants to Live Forever, showing that incredible range, blending drama with pop hooks.
And it includes some of the really ambitious later stuff too, right? The more complex tracks.
Absolutely. That's where you feel the full weight of their talent. You get the epic, multi-section, almost operatic track Innuendo, which is just a statement piece in itself. Plus, the massive global hits that kept them huge through the 80s. A kind of magic, I Wanna Break Free, The Driving Hammer to Fall. The diversity on display is just incredible. The polar opposite of the Taproot album's monotony.
And then there's the ending. Emotionally, it closes with a track that carries so much weight, especially knowing the context.
Yes. The unbelievably powerful and deeply moving The Show Must Go On, Freddie Mercury's swan song, essentially. Including that track doesn't just add another great song, it gives the whole collection immense historical weight and emotional depth. Knowing the circumstances of its recording, Mercury's declining health, his determination, it elevates the whole thing.
It makes it more than just a list of hits.
Exactly. It becomes a narrative in itself, in a way. Just utterly superb on so many levels. It really cemented its position as the clear, undeniable winner of Group 197. So after digging through all of that, the critiques, the context, the philosophical shifts, we get to the official final rankings for Group 197. This confirms who got eliminated and who moved on, based on the author's deep dive and his newly embraced view on compilations. Okay,
let's recap. In fourth place, definitively out, setting that low bar for musical imagination in this group, we had Welcome by Taproot.
Yep. Then in third place, eliminated, and this is the tough one, despite being a really strong, cohesive, historically important studio album, it was All That You Can't Leave Behind by U2. Just unlucky with the draw in this incredibly strong group.
And then, proving the sheer force of concentrated quality, the two compilations moving on to round two. Securing second place was the Masterclass from Lionel Richie, Definitive Collection, Part 1.
And taking the top spot, the undisputed winner of Group 197, progressing in first place, was the mighty Greatest Hits 2 by Queen.
And this group really does perfectly capture that philosophical change we talked about, doesn't it? It shows so clearly how that intense concentration of certified massive hits in those compilations could and did overpower the consistent, high quality, but maybe less explosively peaky strength of a great studio album like U2's.
It connects right back to you, the listener, especially if you're following this album quest idea closely. It's all about critical thinking, isn't it? How do we actually weigh different kinds of musical achievement? Is the best album defined by the artist's original complete vision, the album as a narrative? Or is it defined by the sheer impact and quality of the absolute best moments distilled across potentially decades? This specific group, this source material, makes a really strong case that when the hits are this legendary, that density becomes the winning factor.
What really sticks with me is the author's specific definition of Queen as a supergroup. Not just famous, but technically brilliant. 4 world-class players, but specifically highlighting May and Mercury. 2 of the all-time greats in their fields, driving the whole thing.
And that raises a really interesting question to leave you with as you think about all this. If Queen's supergroup status rests on having that core pairing of undisputed generation-defining talents like May and Mercury, who fits that bill today?
Looking for modern equivalents.
Exactly. Are there any current pairs, duos, partnerships in music, could be rock, pop, hip-hop, whatever, who you think reach that same incredibly high bar? 2 people who are arguably among the very finest in their respective disciplines, working together, defining the sound for this generation.